On 3rd and 3, they protect Brady. Scans the field and lets it fly. It's Evans. It's a touchdown.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty. Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo! And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish, and of course, joining us this week as well, former Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, former running backs coach for the USF Bulls, Mr. Shaun King. Basically, we're a couple of days removed from Week 1's Sunday Night Football contest between the Bucs and the Cowboys, 19-3, the final score in that one, Tampa Bay victorious as they improved to 1-0. There were a lot of things to take away from that game, but I think the biggest takeaways I had were the run game clearly up and going. It was clear in that first half that Todd Bowles and the offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, wanted to commit to running the ball, and they did just that to the tune of a little over 120 yards, I think, or right around there. 6 yards per carry for Mr. Leonard Fournette. And, of course, the strong showing from the defense. Shaun, what were your biggest takeaways from Week 1 looking at this Bucs team as they get ready to play a pretty tough division opponent on the road?
Well, there were two. The first being, I think you saw an identity shift. And I think this is what happens when you go from an offensive-centric head coach in Bruce Arians to a defensive-centric head coach in Todd Bowles. You know, you saw a lot more complimentary football. They wanted to control time of possession. They were very conservative based on field position. And I think that's what you probably can expect, especially until they get their full complement of guys completely healthy. And the second thing I saw was Tampa was one of the few teams who chose not to play their offensive starters in the preseason who found a way to win this past weekend. If you look around starting on Thursday, the Rams didn't play Stafford in that bunch. They looked really rusty. You know, you looked at yesterday, Joe Burrow and the Bengals guys, they didn't look great. Russell, you know, and his teammates from Denver, they didn't play in the preseason. So, you know, I think it was pretty impressive they were able to go out, even if they weren't the same explosive team that we've kind of seen since Brady's been here. I mean, that defense played tremendous. Now, I know Dallas, you know, isn't the Dallas we're accustomed to, but it's still the NFL. And, you know, I think they were extremely impressive. I thought Brady was sharp, you know, considering that he didn't make it on The Masked Singer and he got back in time. So those are my biggest two takeaways.
Yeah, I think you brought up well when you said the complementary, playing complementary football. And it's something that a lot of coaches in the past in Tampa Bay have preached, but a lot of them haven't been able to successfully do it. Of course, you know, you mentioned going from an offensive-minded head coach to a defensive-minded head coach. You were kind of the opposite in your playing days, going from Tony Dungy, a defensive-minded guy who really, I think, preached complementary football. You won a lot of low-scoring games where the defense only gave up 3 points. And then you're going to John Gruden, an offensive guy. What would you say is the biggest difference in a camp when you're trying to shift a philosophy like that?
Well, I guess let me speak to just my situation. I kind of was Trey Lance, you know, and that's a tough spot for a young quarterback on this Sunday. Nobody knows. Unless you're a Jaguar or Commanders fan, no one knows, but everybody knows how Trey Lance played. You know, Texans tied Indy, but how did Davis Mills play? No one knows. Like, it's tough, you know, when you're on a team that has Super Bowl expectations, and from a roster management standpoint, the fan base, the organization feels like this is a Super Bowl roster. Now, how does a young quarterback develop? When can he go out and just play and then go back and learn from those mistakes and get better? So it's going to be a tough road for Trey Lance. I guess the difference in Tampa was the allocation of resources. You know, when Tony was there, I mean, we didn't have any money put on offense. I mean, you think when I got there, that was still Paul Gruber was still playing tackle. Tony Mayberry, you know, Frank Middleton, all of our money was on the defensive side of the ball. And then Gruden came. We brought in the two linemen from Minnesota. We brought in Ricky Dudley, Joe Jurevicius, Keenan McCardell, Michael Pittman, Thomas Jones. So we a lot of the resources, as far as where the money was being spent, kind of switched. In this situation, because most of their key guys are already under contract and already have secured the bag, this is just going to be philosophical. And I think this Bucs team is going to look a lot more similar to some of those Patriot teams that played great defense, ran the ball, and Brady made timely plays, whether it be third down, red zone, or end the game.
Yeah, and we've spoken to this before, especially with having a 45-year-old Tom Brady at quarterback. Complimentary football is your best bet at this point because can Tom Brady throw the ball 700 times a year? Yeah, he can. He proved it last year, leading the league in all of those statistics, but you don't exactly want to have him do that. I think a lot of people look at the Bucs as a pass first, explosive offense, big time plays. Bruce Arians' offense, a lot of big plays by the receivers, big throws from the quarterback, and Brady can do that. But if you don't have to have him do it, it certainly makes things a hell of a lot easier. Plus, you just paid Leonard Fournette a big 3-year contract. The guy earned that money. I think instilling some confidence in the run game when you have to and proving that you can win in more ways than one is really going to help this team in the long run, because one of the biggest things that held them back against LA in the playoffs last year was just lack of firepower and injuries on the offensive side of the ball. Towards the end of the day, the defense was able to kind of hold up the way that they needed to until that final drive of the game. But for the most part, a lot of people look at injuries on offense that really let this team down last year. And listen, if you can run the ball, because you're going to be without Chris Godwin for a couple of weeks, we'll talk about that here in a minute too, but you can find other ways to move the ball on the offensive side, and especially with a team like New Orleans, who has mastered shutting down the pass against Tampa Bay, having a steady run game. A lot of people aren't used to it, but when you've got a guy like Leonard Fournette who is capable of doing that, it just changes your offensive approach, and it's going to make this team much more interesting to watch from here on out. Before we get into some other takes from the game, I wanted to go over some important injury updates here. Wide receiver Chris Godwin was back in the game on Sunday night. He first snapped from scrimmage for the offense. He takes a 24-yard screen pass, gets a first down. Nothing more poetic than that. Has a couple of more catches, but makes a sideline catch later in the night. Tweaks his hamstring, and he's out for the rest of the game. So Todd Bowles addressed it. He suffered a hamstring strain on Sunday night. He is likely to miss some time, but from what we understand, the Bucs kind of dodged a bullet, because when you saw that right leg buckle on the replay, a lot of people immediately thought the ACL. Luckily, it wasn't, just an aggravated hamstring. But with Godwin on the mend for, I don't know, the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe. Evan, let me ask you this. Do you think they have an idea of how much time he's going to miss? Because as long as he's healthy by the playoffs, they should be fine, right?
Yeah, and that's got to be the priority, I think. It was clearly one of the reasons they weren't Super Bowl champions again in 2021 was because of Chris Godwin's loss, and it was a major loss for the offense. So, like you said, the good news is it's not the knee. The knee came out fine. They tested out the knee when they tested out the hamstring there. The knee responded fine to everything. So that's the best news, that it has nothing to do with the knee injury. And honestly, a lot of people say, well, why was he out there? It's football, injuries happen, and you can question maybe he rushed himself back a little bit, but if he felt he was ready and the Bucs felt he was ready, why not put him out there? So it sucks that he will likely miss 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks. I would think it's 4 weeks at most, but it sucks that you won't have him, but hey, this is now a chance for him to get 100% healthy, because they're going to need him down the stretch. And it sucks that they're going to miss him, especially, for this week and then potentially the next 2, which are 3 really tough games coming up. But if you don't have him for week 18 because you had him for weeks 1, 2, and 3, what's the point? You can't win the Super Bowl in the first 3 weeks of the season. But when you get into January, you got to start playing your best football, and you need one of your better players. So I think that has to be the priority for the Bucs and Godwin.
Yeah, they brought him back too soon. Yeah, I would always err on the side of caution, because, even if the knee's healthy, because you've been compensating, overcompensating to try and get it healthy, there are other, lower extremities, that, especially when you play the game like Chris does, where he's in the slot a lot of the time. He's in there with those linebackers and safeties. I wouldn't have brought him back yet. I feel terrible. I bet he felt some pressure because of Gronk not coming back. Russell Gage missed the most of the training camp, so we don't know if he's even 100%. So I'm sure he felt some pressure there, but I was a little skeptical that he was completely ready, to come back. So unfortunate, but hopefully, hamstrings can be tricky now, fellas. Keenan Allen, got one of the Chargers' number one receiver. He pulled his too. Those can be tricky. They generally only heal through rest.
Talking on this Buccaneers wide receiver room, I wanted to get your thoughts on Julio Jones, who is essentially the next man up right now, which is a little weird considering we are talking about Julio Jones of all people, but his week one performance against Dallas, he notches 3 catches, 69 yards. Sean, what did you make of Julio? You think he's up to the task? I mean, he certainly has the resume.
Well, Julio's kind of like a unicorn. He's those once every 20-year, type of players. You just don't find guys with that size, that physicality, those ball skills, that top-end speed, especially when he was in his prime. And competitiveness.
He was the third fastest player from week one.
Yeah,
they clocked him, I think, at 20.5 miles per hour. And for a lot of people looking at a 30-plus-year-old Julio Jones, I certainly didn't think he was capable of hitting that speed this weekend.
Yeah, and he's a specimen like Terrell Owens. He just didn't have all the off-the-field antics. So those guys they're marvels of human nature. So I wouldn't recommend anyone else Julio's age, attempt to do what he's doing. But, when you have a deep threat like Mike Evans on the outside, and, I'm telling you guys, if Russell Gage is completely healthy, he's going to have a huge impact, because he's a really good player. Julio can kind of fill that Gronkowski role, running the over routes on the play action. He's still a heck of a matchup on the outside just because of his size and experience and the way he catches the ball. You saw that one catch he made? Jesus Christ. Where was he when I was playing? Give me one of those, coach. They have talent. They have the same battle guys that everybody else in the league has. Can we get our guys healthy? Can we be productive? Can we win games and remain healthy? But they have a lot more options, than most receiver rooms. You think when they're running it at optimum and full capacity. Now you're talking Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, Julio Jones. No one else is trotting out, the depth of known production, like that. Like some guys have like some younger players. Pittsburgh has George Pickens, Chase Claypool. Like they have younger guys that we think are going to be good, but nobody's 4 deep like with 1,000-yard guys. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I agree, and with Julio now, it's like you said, it's a luxury that not many NFL teams have, and when your wide receiver 2 goes down, okay, you just throw in one of the greatest of all time, argue going to be most likely a first ballot Hall of Famer, who didn't
most
really
likely.
I don't know if he's
stop
first.
Stop it. Are you talking about Julio?
Yeah, Julio.
Man, stop it. Me and Julio down by the schoolyard. Julio going in first ballot.
All right. I'll hold you to it. I think, like you said, that catch, I brought up on the post game that that was like the old Julio. That was the Julio that you saw in 2017, 2018, that you saw terrorize the Bucs. For years, every matchup, it seemed like he was doing something like that. And he almost came down with the other catch later on in the game, which, was a really long pass. Tough throw for Brady. He was just a little low, but Julio looked good. They ran some end arounds with him. He looked explosive on those.
Can I say something
right
quick? This is the power of Tom Brady. Like, this is the magic. He doesn't have the greatest arm. He's not the most athletic, but guys just believe in him. So, like, if you look at Julio and his body language when you're in Tennessee, that's because he practiced with Ryan Tannehill every day. So when he's driving home, he's on the phone with his homeboys like, man, boy, Tannehill garbage. He's hot garbage. Now he's driving home, hey, man, Brady the best I've ever been around. I thought Matt Ryan was good, man. Brady, man, I'm going to go home and go to sleep. That's the magic of Brady is guys know they have a real chance to go win a championship. So fingers crossed that we can keep Julio upright and healthy And sorry for cutting you off. I'm sorry, but I had to
No,
bring it up because
no,
like out of all the
you're
things that Brady does, all of his value, I mean, that's his greatest attribute.
no, I definitely agree. And they talk about when Brady arrived there, how like people on the defense, the coaching staff, the trainers, everything changed. And
The
it's
the
not
jan-
just
the janitors at Advent
yeah,
Health Training Center,
they
they
were
up
just
their game a
cleaning
little
better.
bit because TB12 is in town.
They had a little bit more pep in their step when they were cleaning out the bathrooms. Just, they didn't want TB12 to walk into a dirty bathroom. Who wants that? So, yeah, I definitely agree that, Tom Brady does bring that out in people, and it looks like he's doing it again with Julio Jones. I mean, people forget Antonio Brown was 32, 33 years old playing last year, and he was very productive. At times was the Bucs' best wide receiver. Rob Gronkowski was 32 years old. He did it with, in 2007 with a over 30-year-old Randy Moss, who people thought was done. Like, people thought Randy Moss
Patriots
was
got him for a
finished.
6th-round pick.
Yeah,
That still
people
pisses
thought
me off. The fact that the Raiders just accepted a 6th-round pick for my personal favorite wide receiver of all time is Randy Moss. This is hold on, let me geek out for a little bit. Man, I was so excited when I found this a couple of weeks ago. I went to a Tampa flea market. This guy had this card marked for $20. I looked it up. It's like $115. It's got the uniform fabric in there. I don't buy a lot of football cards unless I really like the player, but yeah, I still get pissed off that the Pats just absolutely fleeced Oakland the way that they did. A sixth
and
rounder for Randy Moss.
and that was 2007, like before Brady had won like 4 other Super Bowls. Like, that was before Brady was even like, in 2007, nobody was really saying, oh, Brady's the greatest of all time. Not many people were saying that. And he still was able to get it out of him. So hopefully, like you said, Sean, Julio can stay up healthy. That's the biggest factor. I don't think nobody's denying the ability. They're, questioning the availability of Julio Jones, and that's been an issue for the past 2 or 3 seasons. When he was with Atlanta, he barely played against the Bucs towards the end of his Atlanta career because he was just hurt all the time. So that's the biggest thing, and I think the depth on this team will help that. You mentioned Russell Gage. Gage was dealing with a little bit of a hamstring, missed a lot. I think caught 2 balls. On Sunday night, and hopefully he'll be back into the swing of things. But yeah, I mean, Julio stepping up and being your wide receiver 2/3 is certainly a good case scenario that really only the Bucs can have at this point.
Sean, let me get your opinion on something. We've talked a lot about Julio Jones, and especially that 140-something yard catch that he made on Sunday night against Dallas, but something else happened on that play that has really been getting a lot of attention on social media, especially over on Twitter. Wanted to get your take on Leonard Fournette kind of chip blocking Micah Parsons the way that he did. He was in there to pass protect on that for Brady, gave him plenty of time. Micah Parsons comes off of the edge. He's already kind of occupied with a block. Lenny gives him the what for, knocks him on his ass. Play is made. And a lot of people shake it off and say, oh, well, that's football. Football's football. It gets physical. I feel like you've seen the highlight that I'm talking about. I mean, Micah Parsons and Leonard Fournette are not chirping each other back and forth on Twitter. What is your take? I mean, football's football, or are you one of those people that thinks maybe this is something the NFL needs to take another look at as far as, considering it a blindside block?
Well, I mean, it's a completely clean block. It was actually part of the game, like when I played. Like, and I mean that because in the defense's defense, they've been relegated to basically having to tag off. Any violent encounter, I mean, they're generally flagged for roughing the passer or unsportsmanlike conduct or targeting. So they're saying, I mean, you got to protect us too. So I think that's where that energy comes from. I think it was Von Miller that chimed in and said that the NFL, the PA has to do something about that. But that's where that energy comes from. I mean, that's not a cheap block. I mean, that's not a cheap play or cheap shot. That's a clean block. It's called chipping. I teach my backs to do it. A lot of times when you have an offensive tackle that's not capable of blocking the defensive end one-on-one, just the mere presence of the running back is enough to detour the pass rusher a lot of times because he know that what happened to Micah could potentially happen. Micah's a younger player. I guarantee you when he rushes a wide rush from now on and the running back exits to that side, Micah's going to hesitate for a second just to make sure. So it's actually an effective technique. But again, I understand the energy that defensive players have because of what they're not allowed to do anymore from a physicality standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a clean play. The ironic thing is that somebody dug up an old tweet of Micah Parsons from last December after Chris Godwin's injury. Tom Brady was saying how he thinks the NFL should sort of protect players when defensemen are going at their knees, kind of. And Tom Brady said how they should protect them, and Micah Parsons quote tweeted it and said like, "Oh man, like just play football." And then he's the one crying about a legal block. Who it wasn't. Leonard Fournette didn't go low. He didn't go towards the head. It was completely clean. And yeah, that's something that Micah Parsons, like you say, he's a young player. He's going to learn. He's a great player, obviously. So I think he'll learn very quickly. And yeah, it's a clean block. I don't see why there even has to be a debate about it, because like you said, it's football. Back when you were playing, you probably got hit a lot more than some of these quarterbacks do with no flags thrown.
I mean, listen,
And I'd have been a 4,030 touchdown guy in this game, man. These guys, they got no fear. They just stand back there, and if he hit you hard, you're gonna get an extra set of downs. So
listen, if somebody lays out a quarterback like Leonard Fournette laid out Micah Parsons, that's a 5-year ban from the NFL and possibly a jail sentence nowadays. I mean, it is nuts out here. But one more Tampa Bay Buccaneers injury I wanted to discuss here, because this guy, while we know Chris Godwin more than likely isn't going to play for the next couple of weeks, this guy's status kind of up in the air. We'll find out a little bit more throughout the week as he shows up on the injury report. But Donovan Smith, after leaving week one's game with an injury to that, I think it was the left wrist.
Elbow, I think it's labeled.
Elbow/wrist area. It looked pretty nasty on the replay, but his x-rays came back negative, which is a huge sigh of relief for Tampa Bay. So kind of along the same lines as Chris Godwin. Definitely feel like you dodged a bullet here, considering you're talking about your starting left tackle, and we know that Josh Wells, without any help against Micah Parsons, is going to go ahead and give up a sack there. So you look at the pass rush you're facing over the next couple of weeks, you could certainly use a guy like Donovan Smith. Todd Bowles said today, I believe it was a hyperextended elbow, and it's more of a pain tolerance thing right now. Donovan Smith is a guy who, I mean, really hasn't missed a start in the NFL up until last year. I don't think he missed any at all last year, did he, Evan?
I don't believe so. He's been like an Iron Man of sorts.
Yeah, so
he rarely misses starts.
With that kind of reputation, let me ask you, Sean, do you think he steps up, takes one for the team this week, and plays against a pretty physical and tough team in New Orleans? So if this is a pain tolerance thing and he's playing the Saints, I'm sure he's going to be hurting during the game this week, but do you think he plays?
well, whenever it comes to something like this, I always check a guy's resume. And as you just so eloquently said, I mean, his resume says that if he can play, he's going to play. So this isn't one of those guys, you go look at his career. He's been in the league 7 years and never played a full slate of games. It's 13 this year and 12 and then 14. Like as you mentioned, if Donovan can play, his resume says he plays. So if he can't, then that means he really can't go. And that would be a shame, because this next stretch of 3 games is pretty important. And it's a significant upgrade from what they played Sunday night versus a diminished Dallas team. I'm actually a person that thinks the Saints are Super Bowl caliber this year. I just think that if they remain healthy, that they're headed in the right direction. Then you get Aaron Rodgers, and then you get Patrick Mahomes, next 3 weeks. So, considering what he's already, lost from an attrition standpoint, whether it be the retirement, free agency, or injury on the interior of that offensive line, I mean, to now lose on your tackles, I mean, what else could go wrong? I mean,
yeah, I think Josh Wells, to be fair to him, I think he played better in the second half. Right when you get in there, it's rough. You're kind of thrown to the wolves. He had the sack to Micah Parsons there, and then I think the Bucs sort of found some answers. One of it, late in the first half, that was the final drive before the half. On that was that Lenny block. So I think the Bucs sort of found some answers there, and hopefully those can carry over. But the good news is that it sounds like this is something. It's a pain tolerance thing. So if Smith can't go this week, the good news is that, and I don't know this for sure, but I don't know if this is something that would carry over 2, 3, 4 weeks. Because if it's a pain tolerance thing, maybe this week's a stretch, but next week hopefully should be good. Because you're right. I mean, not only do you have Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, 2 great quarterbacks, after this New Orleans game. But you also have, I think, they have talent on the defensive side of the ball, both teams, and you're gonna need your tackles there, especially with Brady being not a mobile quarterback. He's not going to be able to avoid the rush like that, and you're already starting a rookie left guard, so you don't want to have an inexperienced bad backup left tackle there. You want to be able to stabilize that, but just like you said, look at the resume. I think if Smith is able to go, I think he will. Right now, it's too early to tell for me, but we'll see if he practices it all this week. I would guess if he does, he'll be limited. He wouldn't be participating in it fully, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But it's a pretty important piece, especially against the Saints team who plays it, just gets up for
They own us. They own us. I don't know what it is. Like it's always that one team where no matter what happens, they figure out a way to win. Like,
did you ever have that team? Did you ever have that team in the pros or in college where no matter what you did?
For us in Tampa, it was a weather thing. I remember we had like that stat. We had never won a game where the opening temperature was below 40 degrees or 30 degrees or something. So it was a weather thing for us because we were in the NFC Central when I was drafted. So this is when Tampa was still in the division with Minnesota, Chicago, Green Bay, Detroit. And we used to split most of the time, back then. At that point, Tampa had gotten pretty good. But I will say this about backups in general. And, when I'm evaluating different situations, I don't really worry about backups in short-term situations. I think the disparity really starts to show itself after a certain number, because your frontline guys, when they get fatigued mentally and physically, that skill set, that core foundation of talent is still enough, to get you through and play winning football. When you start getting to that second group of guys, that's where the drop-off becomes significant. Like the first 2-3 series, they're operating at full output, maximum energy. It's what happens mid-third quarter, when it's played 55 and, fatigue is set in and my ankle hurts a little bit. And, that's kind of where it really starts to show itself. So we're lucky we never really got in a stressful situation Sunday night. Just the game flow kind of was one where, we're going to run the ball, play field position. Bucs kind of dominated from start to finish. But we'll see, some of these competitive, tests, especially, in some environments where it's going to be loud and the snap count. And hearing it, you saw how much Denver really struggled last night, just, getting the playoff, in the allotted time. So hopefully it's not an issue. And Donovan, if you're watching this, we need you, big fella.
Looking ahead to next week and a very physical opponent and the New Orleans Saints. Tough division road game for Tampa Bay as they are on the road for the second week in a row. And I guess maybe we can start this discussion on the offensive line. I wanted to get your take on the young guys in the interior. Robert Hainsey, the second-year center, making his, I don't know if it's his first NFL career start against Dallas. And then, of course, the rookie Luke Gedeke there at left guard. Both of those guys, statistically, I think their block win rate was both over 80%. So that's pretty damn good for an evening in the NFL. But looking at what they're about to face against New Orleans, what is your take on these guys?
Well, I think we're going to figure out, as we move forward, who and what they are and what they're capable of. Sometimes guys surprise you. Sometimes you had like a diamond in the rough that just wasn't getting an opportunity. And you think Ali Marpet wasn't a high draft pick or, a kid that we expected coming out of a small college to come and, what did he start at guard for almost a decade?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah, so, sometimes you find, those diamonds. So we'll see. They got a lot to be proud of, man. Leonard Fournette went for 127 yards rushing. A lot of that is interior O-line, getting to the right defensive linemen, covering them up, finishing the block, so a lot to build on from that game.
Yeah.
What we didn't see was them in known passing situations have to pass pro. Because the Bucs kind of had the lead, never really were in like that. We're down 7-8. We got to throw it, so, but again, it's great to improve off a win. I promise you that. It's better than losing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I brought up on the post-game show too. I was like, yeah, like the game plan's great and like everything, but there will be games where Tom Brady's going to have to throw the ball 35, 40 times. Like, and Tom Brady's going to have to win the game for him. And how does the offensive line hold up there is going to be a real test. So we're going to stick on the offensive side of the ball before we wrap up. The Bucs offense has really struggled against the Saints the past, when the Tom Brady era, it's really struggled. Last time these two teams played, the Bucs didn't score a point, right? The Bucs lost 9-0. I mean, come on. But what do you think the Bucs have to do on offense, maybe differently or maybe like better, to be able to find success against New Orleans?
Well, I wanted to make sure I had my statistics right, but the Saints finished 4th last year in team defense in the National Football League, so it wasn't just the Bucs that struggled.
That is
and
true.
I just think they're going to be even better on defense this year, because Dennis Allen is the head coach. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of what you saw with Todd Bowles, being in charge is what you're going to see with Dennis Allen. I always say this, offensive coaches aren't just happy with winning. They want to be entertaining in the win. Defensive coaches don't give a damn if ain't a fan in the stands, if it's 6-3. They just worried about, can we defend the run? Can we rush the quarterback? Can we play pass defense without committing fouls? That's all they care about. So it'll be an interesting matchup. Saints, Bucs, 2 defensive head coaches when we've gotten Sean Payton versus Bruce Arians, the last couple of years. So I think balance is key. The biggest asset, for a young offensive lineman is not to put them in a lot of known passing situations. I'm gonna find out a lot about our secondary. The one thing that I did not know coming out of the Dallas game is, they never really tested us. They didn't push the ball down the field. They didn't really have anybody as a pass catcher who could run after the catch, who we thought was gonna catch a short pass and take it long. But this game would be different. Michael Thomas looks to be fully back to his Pro Bowl level, based on the second half of the Falcons game. They added Chris Olave, who made a couple catches. Jarvis Landry had some big plays. Of course, they got Kamara at tailback. So this will be a different animal. People say what they want about Jameis, but not a lot of guys walking around and throwing for 4,000 plus yards and 40 touchdowns in the season. I don't care how many interceptions he's thrown. Like, that lets you know that the talent is there. So this will be a much different test for the Bucs, and it's at New Orleans, right?
It's the Saints' home opener.
So the dome's gonna be loud.
Yeah. So the Who Dat crowd, especially they're 1-0. They'll be a little more. They'll have a bigger impact than the shocked Dallas faithful from Sunday night.
Looking at their game against Atlanta week 1, that one obviously comes down to the wire. Atlanta with another classic choke job. It is actually impressive how they continue to find ways to lose football games. So the Saints able to come up victorious in that one, but their running back ran all over New Orleans. And that's kind of my curiosity coming into this one, is that we heard Jenkins just recently talking about how the Saints secondary is basically built to shut down Tom Brady from throwing the football. And if the Bucs find themselves in that situation yet again, I'm really, really curious to see how this run game shakes out. I know it's kind of weird saying, as a Bucs fan who has watched this team over the last 3 seasons, I'm excited to watch the run game this week, but I feel like the more consistency you can build, the more ways you can win football games. I'd like to see Lenny run all over these guys this week. And I feel like that's probably something they're going to have a better shot of doing rather than Tom Brady throwing over, 300 yards. I just don't think that happens this week.
Well, let me say this, completely different run scheme than what they saw last week. I almost forgot when Mariota went to Atlanta that Arthur Smith was his OC in Tennessee. And Atlanta's run game is almost all zone read. I think Mariota had like 12 carries for 72 yards and a touchdown. Now, listen, if Brady carries it 12 times for 72 yards on Sunday, listen, hey, man, I'll pay for you guys to come to Vegas for a week, all on me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
If Brady gets over 70.
That ain't happening. So, it's just, and I always like to put context on stuff. So, stopping or defending the Tampa run game is completely different than trying to stop and defend Atlanta, who's throwing the quarterback as an extra, responsibility into the run scheme. So, it'll be fascinating just to watch it and see is it the Saints run defense or is it just the scheme, with Marietta, and him being able to pick up things with his feet.
Yeah, without a doubt, it's going to be an interesting game. A big division battle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road for week 2. If they win this one, you basically, I think, you go up to first in the division despite New Orleans playing 2 games already. So you want to get out ahead of those guys as quickly as you can. If they lose this one, well, then New Orleans is 2-0 in the division already, and the Bucs got to dig themselves out of a hole. So it can't be understated how crucial this game is.
What a confidence boost it would be heading into a Green Bay and Kansas City if you were finally able to beat New Orleans in the regular season. What a confidence boost it would be for this team if you were able to do that. So, beat New Orleans, it's difficult, and I don't know.
I had them losing both games just because I'd rather underpromise and get surprised.
Yes.
But I just when I was coming up with my win total, I just went, okay, we're gonna lose in New Orleans twice. I mean, we lost them with Taysom Hill and I think Ian Book playing quarterback last year. So
I said, if New Orleans, I'm not gonna pick them to beat New Orleans until they do. So
yeah. I mean, I guess we can all agree on that then. I was going to ask your picks to wrap up the show here, but you got them dropping this game this week, huh?
I'm going to go with the split. I'm going to say New Orleans wins in New Orleans and Tampa wins in Tampa. So
okay.
I'm going to go 50-50. Right. That would be improvement for us for what's happened in the recent past.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, any win over these guys in the regular season is going to go a long way, considering, just like you mentioned, they haven't seen it since, regular season 2019? Did they split with them that year? They got swept? No, 18, right? Was the last time they beat them in the regular season?
Last time the Bucs beat the Saints was September 9th, 2018. Last time
with
the Bucs beat the Saints
Ryan Fitzpatrick?
Yes.
Yeah. That was a fun game too, man, but definitely feels like ages ago. Hopefully they can get the job done. Shaun, thank you so much for jumping on the pod with us this week. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for this episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Thank you so much for checking us out over on YouTube or on our audio outlets. We don't give you guys enough love, but we truly do appreciate you. You're the backbone of this podcast. A lot of people get so enamored with the video part of it that you forget about your listening audience, so we truly do appreciate you guys. Check out the show on social media. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. And you can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. Shaun, do you have anything you want to promote before we wrap up?
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Real Shaun King. Instagram, it's at Coach Shaun King. And, of course, I host a 3-hour television show out here in Las Vegas, where I currently live, from 3 to 6 Pacific, Monday through Friday. You can watch it on the VSIN, VSIN network. If you have YouTube television, it's on there. Also, you can download the app and watch there or listen.
Great stuff, man. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. That's our show for this week. We'll talk to you guys a little bit later as we get more in-depth on the matchup with New Orleans on our weekly game preview. That should be coming out on Friday. Expect us to be live on YouTube for that one. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish and Shaun King. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.